Welcome back to Spooky Stories. For the next 10 days leading up to Halloween, I'll be sharing spooky stories, but not always spooky, from books within the collections at Seton Hall University, along with the strange and sometimes just downright weird of collections. I hope you enjoy. It is day 3 of Spooky Stories, and this is The Piper and the Puca, written by Douglas Hyde, which has been translated from its original Gaelic and edited into Irish fairy and folktales by W.B. Yeats. In the old times, there was a half-fool living in Dunmore, in the county Galloway, and although he was excessively fond of music, he was unable to learn more than one tune, and that was the Black Rogue. He used to get a good deal of money from the gentleman, for they used to get sport out of him. One night, the piper was coming home from a house where there had been a dance, and he, half drunk, when he came to a little bridge that was up by his mother's house, he squeezed the pipes on and began playing the Black Rogue. The Puca came behind him and flung him up on his own back. There were long horns on the Puca, and the piper got a good grip of them, and then he said, "Destruction on you, you nasty beast, let me home. I have a 10-penny piece in my pocket for my mother, and she wants snuff." "Never mind your mother," said the Puca, "but keep your hold. If you fall, you will break your neck and your pipes." Then the Puca said to him, "Play up for me, the Shan van Vogt." "I don't know it," said the piper. "Never mind, whether you do or you don't," said the Puca. "Play up, and I'll make you know." The piper put wind in his bag, and he played such music as made himself wonder. "Upon my word, you're a fine music master," says the piper. Then, "But tell me, where you're for bringing me?" "There's a great feast in the house of the Banshee on the top of Croagh Patrick tonight," says the Puca, "and I'm for bringing you there to play music, and take my word, you'll get the price for your trouble." "By my word, you'll save me a journey then." Says the piper, "For Father William put a journey to Croagh Patrick on me, because I stole the white gander from him last Martinmas." The Puca rushed him across hills and bogs and rough places, till he brought him to the top of Croagh Patrick. Then the Puca struck 3 blows with his foot, and a great door opened, and they passed in together into a fine room. The piper saw a golden table in the middle of the room, and hundreds of old women sitting round it. The old women rose up and said, "100,000 welcomes to you, you Puca of November. Who is this you have brought with you?" "The best piper in Ireland," says the Puca. One of the old women struck a blow on the ground, and a door opened in the side of the wall, and what should the piper see coming out but the white gander which he had stolen from Father William. "By my conscience, then," says the piper, "myself and my mother ate every taste of that gander, only one wing, and I gave it to Moira, and it's she told the priest I stole this gander." The gander cleaned the table and carried it away, and the Puca said, "Play up music for these ladies." The piper played up, and the old women began dancing, and they were dancing till they were tired. Then the Puca says to pay the piper, and every old woman drew out a gold piece and gave it to him. "By the tooth of Patrick," he said, "I am as rich as a son of a lord." "Come with me," says the Puca, "and I'll bring you home." They went out then, and just as he was going to ride on the Puca, the gander came up to him and gave him a new set of pipes. The Puca was not long until he brought him to Dunmore, and he threw the piper off at the little bridge, and then he told him to go home, and says to him, "You have 2 things now that you never had before. You have sense and music." The piper went home, and he knocked at his mother's door, saying, "Let me in. I'm as rich as a lord, and I'm the best piper in Ireland." "You're drunk," said the mother. "No, indeed," says the piper. "I haven't drunk a drop." The mother let him in, and he gave her the gold pieces, and, "Wait now," he says, "till you hear the music I'll play." He buckled on the pipes, but instead of music there came a sound as if all the geese and gander in Ireland were screeching together. He wakened the neighbors, and they were all mocking him, until he put on the old pipes, and then he played melodious music for them. And after that he told them all he had gone through that night. The next morning, when his mother went to look at the gold pieces, there was nothing there but the leaves of a plant. The piper went to the priest and told him his story, but the priest would not believe a word from him until he put the pipes on him, and then the screeching of the ganders and geese began. "Leave my sight, you thief," said the priest. But nothing would do the piper till he would put the old pipes on him to show the priest that his story was true. He buckled on the old pipes, and he played the melodious music, and from that day till the day of his death, there was never a piper in the country Galway that was as good as he was.
So said, this comes from Irish Fairy and Folktales, selected and edited with an introduction by W.B. Yeats, with 12 illustrations from James Torrance. It was published in London by W. Scott around 1893. This book doesn't actually have a publication date listed in it. However, some outside research and some listings online say could be 1893, 1894, so basically the 1890s. Now, if you remember the Changeling poem from last year, this is from the same book. We're just focusing on a solitary fairy this time round, Puca. Now, Puca, which can have various spellings from P-U-C-A, from P-H-O-O-K, K-A, is just a creature of Celtic, English, and Channel Island folklore. They are essentially shapeshifters, shape changers that take the form of horses, goats, cats, dogs, and hares, even taking on human disguises, which include various animal features such as animal ears or a tail. Now, if you're thinking this sounds like Puck from A Midsummer's Night's Dream by William Shakespeare, you'd be right. Basically, our mischievous fairy is in fact closely related to a Puca. William Shakespeare probably drew inspiration for Puck from a Puca. So they share their trickster qualities, their shape-shifting abilities, a connection to nature and the supernatural, as well as a role in folklore as unpredictable, magical beings. You also remember from last year how we kind of talked about the book, maybe, so I'll just go through it again. It has a beautifully decorated cover and gilded pages. Something we really didn't talk about last year was what was happening in the world when this book was published, like what was going on in 1890s. So during the late 19th century and into the early 20th century, there was a literary movement taking place called the Irish Literary Revival, also called the Irish Literary Renaissance, or sometimes nicknamed the Celtic Twilight. And this revival is associated with a renowned interest in Ireland's Gaelic heritage and the growth of Irish nationalism from the middle of the 19th century. And one of the most foremost figures of this movement was William Butler Yeats, editor of this book, that is essentially a celebration of Irish folklore and Irish heritage. Just from the way it's bound, how it is bound, how it kind of just, it's a very showy book that kind of draws you in. So now this specific story, The Piper and the Puca, was written by Douglas Hyde, another interesting character, who was an Irish academic, linguist, scholar of the Irish language, politician, and diplomat, who would serve as the first president of Ireland from June 1938 to June 1945. And it's a quite a fitting inclusion for a book published during that time and a celebration of Irish heritage and nationalism. In the introduction, Yeats does, it does seem that Yeats has a regard for Douglas Hyde as being, an important figure in this Irish literary movement that is happening. Well, that is it for this episode. Thanks for tuning in.
And that is it for today's episode of Spooky Stories. If you have enjoyed Spooky Stories, be sure to share and follow us on social media at SHU_libraries. Until next time, keep your curiosity alive, and remember, the library holds more than just books. Some stories may linger long after the lights go out.